Max Verstappen took his 8th victory of 2021 after narrowly holding off Lewis Hamilton in the heat of the Texas sun at the US Grand Prix. After losing the lead at the start, Verstappen and Red Bull chose to go aggressive by undercutting Mercedes twice in order to gain track position. It was a risky strategy with Hamilton going 8 laps longer on his second stint, which meant that he'd have fresher tires in the last 20 laps of the race. But the gamble paid off in the end, as Verstappen put in one of the drives of his life to win and extend his championship lead to 12 points. At a circuit in which Mercedes has dominated, Verstappen's US Grand Prix weekend could not have gone any better, and the championship showdown in the Wild West was a perfect display of what Formula One is all about. But a race like this that is determined by such small margins shows us just how special these two drivers are and how Verstappen is on the same level of one of F1's greats. But before we break down this race any further, consider subscribing to the channel, and stay tuned for a very special podcast with Sky Sports F1's Karun Chandok coming out later this week on the Backmarkers F1 show. Verstappen beat Hamilton to victory by just 1.33 seconds in Austin, which some are calling the best victory of his career. Whether or not it was his best, it certainly was one of his most stressful and complicated victories with the way the strategy panned out. After giving up the lead on lap 1 thanks to Hamilton's lightning start, Red Bull triggered the early undercut on lap 11 despite Verstappen's strong pace on the medium tire. They elected to go aggressive and gain track position, which they did in the first and second round of pit stops. Verstappen's race was complicated when Red Bull pitted him very early on the second stint on lap 29, while over at Mercedes, Hamilton stayed out for 8 laps longer, meaning he'd have fresher rubber to attack the Dutchman at the end of the race. With Hamilton's blistering pace on the new hards, almost everyone watching thought Verstappen was just a sitting duck. After looking at Max's first set of hards and seeing that they were very worn out, even Christian Horner felt that he wasn't going to pull it off, saying post-race, quote, "Lewis, with 8-lap newer tires and the first set of hards that came off, we were pretty much down to the canvas, and then thinking, well, we're not going to have much left on the end here. I really didn't think he was going to pull that off." Red Bull took the upper hand, however, as they believed in the fact that catching is one thing, but overtaking is another. Even though Hamilton was catching at a rate of 1 second per lap, Verstappen prioritized his rear tire management to get good exits out of the slow-speed corners and eventually keep Hamilton out of his DRS range. The worn hard tires on the RB16B made the high-speed corners very challenging as he was struggling for grip, and the backmarkers in the final 10 laps certainly didn't make it any easier for both Max and Lewis. In the end, though, Verstappen's racecraft made the difference as he held off Hamilton to take his 18th career victory and Red Bull's 200th overall podium. It's races like these that really separate the good drivers from the exceptional, and that's exactly what Hamilton and Verstappen are, exceptional racing drivers. The next closest car to them was some mere 42 seconds behind Verstappen and Hamilton. Now granted, Sergio Perez did not have the drink and wasn't feeling 100%, but regardless, the pace of the front two was just on another level. But besides giving us great drama and entertainment, the 2021 US Grand Prix really showed us that Verstappen is on the same level of F1 greats such as Lewis Hamilton in terms of racing abilities. Verstappen was able to handle the enormous pressure of a 7-time world champion hunting him down on a strategy in which put him in a losing position many times before, and yet he still won. It could possibly be a defining drive for Verstappen in this year's championship, but not many drivers could have held off Hamilton like he was able to. The superb tire management from Max is something we regularly see from Hamilton, and it was this factor that Mercedes couldn't find an answer for. It wasn't that Hamilton and Mercedes had a bad race either, quite the contrary. Hamilton drove brilliantly without making any mistakes and gained the early advantage on lap 1. At the end of the day, they just didn't have an answer for Verstappen's pace and racecraft. Hamilton said post-race, quote, "I don't know what we could have done differently. I'll sit down and talk with the team afterwards. I think the team did a great job today, and it was what we had. For years we've known of the talent that Max Verstappen possesses, but there was always that question of how he would stack up against the very best. Whether you like him or not, it's clear now that he's a special talent whose driving abilities is on the same level as some of F1's greats. His weekend in Texas showcased the full package of one-lap pace, excellent racecraft, and the ability to excel under immense pressure. No matter which driver you support, you have to admit that Verstappen and Hamilton are a cut above the rest at the moment, and their battle at the Circuit of the Americas proved the greatness of both drivers. Momentum might be on Red Bull's side as we head to some high-altitude tracks, but this championship is far from over. There are still 133 points on offer with one more sprint weekend to go, so the tide could turn very quickly either way. It's going to be a thrilling finish to what has been a very special 2021 championship. It's races like the US Grand Prix that reminds us why we love F1 racing. We have two drivers at the peak of their abilities, in two cars at the peak of their engineering, and one lucky fan base that gets to sit back and enjoy it all. So what did you think of Verstappen versus Hamilton at the US Grand Prix? Be sure to drop your thoughts and opinions down below, and if you enjoyed this little video, give it a thumbs up, and check out the rest of our content for more F1 coverage. Thanks for watching, and you'll be hearing from us again very soon.